Anybody who spent their entire life on the internet during or around the years 2010 to 2012-ish probably know what creepypasta is. More or less, creepypastas were, at their most fundamental level, internet ghost stories written by randos, and they were amazing. They did exist before then, but they kinda blew up in popularity around that time after a few of them gained major traction, creating this gold rush for a bit, before just kinda fading out. Nowadays, the concept of creepypasta has been reduced to little more than just a meme, which kinda makes me sad, to tell you the truth. The joke being that none of these things are actually scary and they're all just really stupid, and I'm not delusional, don't get me wrong, a lot of these stories really were stupid, and I'll be talking about some of those. But that's the beauty of it. These weren't professional horror writers, these were just average people trying to rustle some jimmies over the internet. It's a game of imagination, and even those who wrote bad stories probably learned something from their experience. Now, there are countless genres of creepypastas. You had creepypastas that were about an evil monster or entity that goes mad and tries to kill people, like Jeff the Killer. Remember this guy? Jeff the Killer was a story about a kid who kinda just went crazy for no real explainable reason. But after an altercation with some of the neighborhood dickweeds, he got set on fire, and that's why he looks like this. In spite of being one of the dumber ones, it did gain a lot of traction, and it's still one of the defining creepypastas. I guess the image really carried it. Then there was Slender Man, obviously. He was a little more fleshed out, which is ironic, because he's so slender. I wonder if he's eaten recently. Oh, what's that? He has? Oh yes, of course. He eats children. Then there are other creepypastas like The Strangest Security Tape I've Ever Seen, which are just very well written to the point that it's easy to just immerse yourself in the world of the story and therefore suspend disbelief. I strongly recommend you read this one. There's a personal favorite of mine called Abandoned by Disney. This is a story about an explorer who went to an abandoned Disney resort to take photos of stuff. But while he's on the island, he sees and hears all kinds of weirdo shit. And then a Mickey Mouse costume reanimates itself and pulls its head off and haunts him for the rest of his days. What really made this creepypasta so cool was its sense of reality and plausibility. Now, obviously, a Mickey Mouse costume trying to kill you is a little bit out there, but this island actually exists. And it was actually a Disney resort, and it is actually abandoned now. It's still there, in the Bahamas. And I really wouldn't put it past Disney to create an evil Mickey to attack unwitting explorers to protect their trade secrets, or just for fun. You all know what Disney is like. Even a lot of the best creepypastas don't have much plausibility. Remember Lavender Town Syndrome? This is another one of those defining creepypastas. It's a story about how certain frequencies in the Lavender Town theme song possessed kids and made them commit suicide. And while it's true that there are frequencies that can only be heard by children, and music can impact your mood, and possibly contribute to depression, if this was a real story, the media would pounce on that like crazy, because we all know how they love to say video games kill people. But the ones that stick are the ones that are somewhat plausible. When you don't have access to cutting-edge CG and special effects work, stories that take a much more grounded, less is more approach are the best ones. But if there is something cool you can do with your limited tools, it can also really push your story over the edge. One of the biggest stories that blew up was the Ben Drowned story, and for the unaware, this was a story about a possessed Majora's Mask game cartridge. It tells the story of a boy named Ben who drowned in a lake, who tries to communicate to the player using the Link statue from the game, and through some extremely unsettling glitches and cutscenes. While the story itself was interesting on its own, what really pushed it over the edge was the fact that the writer actually had footage of all the twisted events of the story unfolding. Now that there was actual footage, it became exponentially more terrifying because it was now real. Of course, the events of the videos were actually manufactured through ROM hacking, but that demonstrates a ridiculous amount of effort and dedication. Gaming creepypastas are one of the subgenres that I probably enjoy the most. The majority of these stories revolve around a particular video game that starts acting up and doing creepy things that they aren't supposed to. These are really cool, especially if you played the games on which the stories are based. One of the coolest of those is Pokemon Creepy Black, a story about a hacked version of Pokemon Red where you can literally kill Pokemon and trainers. This is not implausible either. ROM hacks are a thing, we all know that. What makes it even cooler is that fan versions of this game have actually been made. This one is also cool because it's fairly reserved. It doesn't go overboard with grotesque shock value or over-the-top stuff, Which brings us to Sonic.exe. This is perhaps one of the most infamous creepypastas of all of them. It tells the story of how a kid named Tom gets a weird Genesis-style Sonic game where Sonic is an evil, demented monster and brutally murders all of the characters in a grotesquely bloody fashion. And then at the end, a Sonic plushie jumps out of the computer screen with bloodstains under its eyes. And then I guess the kid dies or something, I forget. One of the big issues with this one is that there's no real subtlety or even any sort of canonical justification for why what's happening is happening. It's mostly just, uh-oh, Sonic is evil now and he killed everyone. You know, just like the actual games. There were a lot of creepypastas like Sonic.exe and a lot of them were pretty funny.
Uh-oh, 666. That's spooky. Also, blood. And then there was this red with bleeding and evil stopwatches. I'm scared, you guys.
I think it was these ones that gave creepypasta its negative image, but I don't really blame the authors for that. They were trying stuff. Putting your own shit on the internet sets you up for scrutiny in any situation. I know that firsthand. And if nothing else, putting yourself in the line of fire like that is nothing to scoff at, and I'm sure that many of these writers have improved in the face of the criticism, and that is commendable. The last category I want to talk about is the so-called mindfuck creepypastas. These are creepypastas that describe a fucked up alternative backstory to a story that we're already familiar with. There's dumb ones like the Rugrats theory, which say all kinds of fucked up things about the characters' backstories, but with no actual tangible evidence, like, oh, this kid is stillborn, and he was aborted, and he was trampled by a bunny, and I was like, what? But then there's Zorax. This one is nutso. 100%. Read this one. There's no real thesis or point to this video, I just wanted to shoot the shit and take you back to a simpler time. Back then, I didn't know anything about politics, I didn't pay attention to how broken and scary the real world was. All that mattered to me is that some guy halfway around the world wrote some scary thing about Mario that made me afraid to get up in the middle of the night to take a piss for a couple of days before I forgot about it. In a way, I sincerely wish creepypastas were still respected enough to the point that more people would try to throw their hat in the ring and create an awesome story out of it. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, and that makes me kinda sad. I hope one day it does make a comeback and we get more masterpieces like Star Fox 6664, but it's a pipe dream at this point, and that's quite upsetting. Creepypastas do still exist though, and every now and then I'm sure that one special story shines its way through the darkness, and that's what we all really need right now. Light to disperse the eternal darkness.